Right, let's flip it then. Obviously, as you say, we'll do the matchups. Let's do the SK side. So you give like an overview there. Here's the problem I have right now is, if I do the sporting thing that I like to do, of like, I know the payroll for SK isn't huge. I know that, like, in terms of who was available in the game of musical chairs in the offseason, they couldn't have gotten all the big names, mate. Look, I will say there were worlds where they could have had, like, Larson, etc. But if you look at who they've ended up with, they did a pretty good job again. I think they're a pretty well GM team relative to what they've got. That problem is this. If you look at the resources they have, they're actually punching above their weight. Like, they are a contender. Like, the joke is, mate, if I had to list right now, gun to my head, who wins the LEC, I'd probably have them third or fourth. Like, I think it's really plausible. If I look at who else is out there, my issue is, because they are, like, sort of a budget team with some min-maxes and some, like, shrewd decisions, there's obviously, like, certain areas where they're not the strongest, and there's certain areas where they have holes. So, here's my question. What do you like about SK, and then what worries you about them? Because I do notice, even when they're at the best, nobody ever goes all in and goes, I think they're going to win this, but no one's ever said that line. Even they don't say that, mate. So what do you like, but then also what's holding you back? Because something's holding us all back, I feel like.
So I'll give you, okay, so in week 1, okay, they had like really, really good macro. Now, I hate narratives. I despise narratives, because what narratives tend to do is they override the reality of what's in, like, the game.
Sure.
And so, it's not that I despise that, because I always said Niski works well with all his junglers. Like, he works well with, like, Blabber, Aloya, Whipple jungle. But what the thing was, is like, is it that Niski works well with them, or are these good junglers that he just happened to play with? You know what I mean? But, like, now that he's done the Esma one, I can buy more into this narrative that this guy has not played Tier 1 League of Legends for a single fucking second, and he looks really good with, like, Niski. So, like, okay, I can handle that one, and I can give some, like, props. And I even think, like, the post, like, laning, where, like, Niski isn't, like, a guy that, like, min-maxes and stuff. I think he's, like, been pretty good, like, borderline, like, underrated. Like, the KC game that they lost to when he was on, like, Corki, some, like, unfortunate stuff happened that game where Sakin outplayed because of mechanics. And, like, Niski was, like, doing really well. The reason, just to go back to your point, that I think a lot of people don't, like, really take them, is, first of all, it's kind of like that star power. It's like, you know what I mean? They've not got, like, the dedicated, like, and they might not call it star power. They might call it just something, like, whatever, like, they want to call it. When they, like, win, like, games and stuff like that, outside of, like, Executive, because it's just what, like, ADC is like, you know what I mean? It is very, like, formulaic and, like, breakdown. I would never go say, like, when I watch them, their team fighting is anything like BDS's, like, can be. Like, the problem with the SK games is, like, when they're front-running from their lanes and their early jungling and stuff like that in their early games, going into their mid games, that's all good. And when they front-run the game, it looks great. When the game goes against them, like, that is some of the stuff where I think, is their mid game is, like, watertight as someday, like, we'll come to this later on, well, I've got reasons for this, like Fnatic and, like, G2s, where, you know what I mean, like, they can find advantages even in ridiculous deficits. I don't think they've got that, like, creativity or that, like, player, like, knowledge on them now. But for the first 15 minutes, they look amazing. And that will win you a lot of League of Legends games. I think until they're kind of, like, proven and pushed by, like, the more, like, elite team, we'll kind of find out. I don't think it's completely out of the, like, the ordinary to say they would win. It's just there is just some sort of, like, disconnect, not so much disconnect, but, like, the unreliance of, like, when I see they're, like, 5k, 6k down, like, I don't think there's, like, a chance they're going to come back into the game, and it is just, like, a slow bleed out, where when I've watched G2 and BDS, I've seen it too many times now during the reg, that it's been fed to me that, like, there is a chance that they can come back into this game and, like, steal it back. So, I don't know, it's kind of hard to, like, verbalize, but I do agree with that concept, that, like, even as good as they are, no one, like, dives on that kind of, like, hill for whatever reason.
Yeah, the problem I have with SK, I think you actually framed it well there in terms of, like, the win conditions, is basically if they get leads and in the right lanes, then they actually can be quite clean and they can look pretty good. And actually that's another area where Niski can do some great work in the mid game. My problem as well is I also do think, first of all, I actually do think just a flaw of the roster construction is this thing where supposedly at the request of Exekick, DOS has to be the support. Like, I'm not going to hate on him like I would have last year. He's all right, but he's clearly not anywhere close to a top support in my opinion. Like, the difference is, again, if I drop in a bunch of good supports here, doesn't this bot lane just become super powerful? Doesn't this team become even more powerful? Doesn't the win conditions just grow? So there's one thing. And then, because I actually think the rest of the team's pretty well put together. And then the other factor for me is this. What you just described, though, is probably one of the worst ways to win if you aren't a team with the best players. Because when the playoffs come and you get more nervous, this is why, actually, if people don't know, if you watch the NBA in the modern day, as much as everyone says that line, that like 3-point shooting has ruined the game, it has in a sense, because that's just all people play the styles. But actually in the playoffs, it doesn't just win you the championship, believe it or not, because there's loads of games where people get tight, get nervous. And when you get nervous, the further away you are, the more likely you are to miss, because now any
your form breaks down.
So the problem with that style is first of all, it's really hard for any team to just have leads at the beginning of every game. It's actually why I always did say I thought people did underrate the rogue squads. Like, mate, Freddie 122 had to be killing those drafts if he was getting like 2 or 3 lanes ahead every BO1. Like, that's hard. But the other problem is when you get in the playoffs and you have some inexperienced players and you all play a little bit tighter. I mean, I'm immediately thinking of the Isma guy if you get the BO5s. There's immediately B-Way's going to get tested. And then I'm thinking of people like Tosh. And then there's going to be a lot of pressure in some of these games when it's like a close game, but it's 35 minutes. Now Exakick's not just going to have to carry. He's going to have to carry from like a mid to behind scenario. Like, this is where I can see them having my problems is the problem. That's basically why I sort of do see them. I actually think they'll even go like that. I think in the BO3s, they'll run through and they'll be in position to be like 3rd or 4th, and then maybe that's when they'll fuck it up and they'll drop a series and they'll suddenly be like 4th or whatever it'll be at the end of the split, and maybe they won't like fulfill the potential. But the sad thing is, though, like I say, if you've just framed the sport in context of what was possible, they've actually still done a great job. To even be where they are is about the upper band of what was even possible. Like, if I never even would have imagined I would say the statement like they could win the league. Like, it's not impossible now.
The crazy thing is, and this is one of the things that not taints it, but it's how bad the G2 loss was. Like, kind of really does like dent. Like, put it this way, we weren't putting a lot of stock in Hans Sama, right? But my God, did he make like Exokick and Doss look? You know what I mean? He was bitching on them a bit. Like, he was like, kind of, the king is the king because he's the king. You have to take the crown off his head, you know. And like, it was a little reminder to like those that are playing. Like, I'm not finished yet. Like, you've not won anything yet. So, yeah, there's like some, and also obviously, I actually put the littlest amount into the KC loss, not because it was KC, by the way. Let me just say, it was actually the way that the game like turned against them, because it required like that ridiculous Nico interaction where like obviously the skill shot goes through the Nico and Exokick flashes forwards it, and that's what starts it. I put like less like thing into that. Like, if that happens to you, it happens. Like, at the end of the day, you've been done.
Yes.
But you know what I mean?
That's basically we need to make a term, because you guys don't have it in League, but you know it from CSGO. We just see you've been CSGO'd, you know, when you do it the Nico and you miss. There needs to be a League version of that, because the amount of times that something wacky happens in the game, it's like, you just got to take it, mate. That's just the game, innit? Just enjoy getting fucked by the game, you know?
Yeah.
And also, by the way, spoiler, there's another problem actually people don't complain about enough with the Riot champion design. Now the problem, in my opinion, isn't the idea that they're all super overtuned like that. Obviously they are when they're released, but that's the way it always was with any champion. The real problem the modern Riot champions have is they're so complicated in what their kits can do that it just takes too long for people to figure it out. Like, the joke is, it's actually only until now that people have a sense of how to even play against Nico and LEC, bro. And the joke is, like, if you watch the LPL, that just shit on everyone the entire last year, guys. There's a reason why at Worlds, like that night, like fucking 4-man one was like God. Like, it's people even now, some of them are still a bit sketch against that champion. It's why you don't even have to be the best on it. You can just make it work. It's why it doesn't surprise me Nook plays it all the time. Actually, it's pretty effective for him.
It was really funny. It was like Caps was one of the first people.
Yes.
It was like one of the first people that illustrated not like because like everyone knew it, but the actual problematic design where if you like turret dive, you could turn into the cannon minion and tank the turret and take the reduced damage from the turret shot.
Oh, it's mental.
And and he takes like 9 turret shots, and the enemy mid laner is just like, it's bullshit. It's bullshit.
Yes.
It's bullshit. And everyone in the crowd's cheering. It's like the fucking gladiators. And it's like they bring out 3 lions to fight you, and everyone's applauding and roaring. You're like, this is fucking bullshit. It's like, what is going on here? I'm not supposed to win this.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.